Hello and welcome to this tutorial from the WASSCE ICT Academy video library. In this video tutorial, I will be answering the WASSCE ICT Elective Practical Exams 2024, and in this other video I will be focusing on the database aspect of the practical questions, which is question number 3. And as you can see on screen, it says you are the database administrator in Abotheri Savings Collection Scheme, and you have been asked by management to create an application using MS Access that will keep track of contributors' savings and withdrawals, and you have some follow-up questions. Now, one advice I will be giving students when attempting to answer database questions is to first, very important, to first read the entire set of questions that you have. You're given a scenario, okay? So first thing that you need to do is to make sure that you read all the questions from the beginning to the ending. If you can even have a piece of paper to sketch a plan on how you are going to create the database before you even start creating the database file. This is absolutely important. That will really help you, because otherwise you may go up to at the middle of the creation of the database, you start having some issues, and this has happened to some students during this examination. So my advice to any student that is about to sit for the ICT elective examination, if you're faced with a database question, first read all the questions, understand the scenario, so that you can come up with a plan on how to build a database effectively. So now that we have a clear understanding of what we are dealing with, from here now we can easily go and then create a database. Okay, so let's go to Microsoft Access. Now, starting with the first question, it says we first create a database and we name it with our index number and full name. So I have Microsoft Access open, so I will use blank database. So when I click on the blank database now, the next thing that I'm going to do here is to provide the name. So this is where you're going to write your index number and your full name. Okay, sorry, your index number and your full name. So now here, let me just type my name and then if you look at the next question, yes, so you're going to save it in your folder. So to save it in the folder that you have created, your exam folder that you have created on the desktop, you have to click on this icon. But that also depends on the version you are using. So just look for where you have the browse button. Okay, so let's say my folder is on the desktop. I'll open the folder and then I'll come and save the file. So I'll click OK. So now I've created, I've put the name and then also the location of where I'm saving my database. So from here I can click create. So I've successfully created the database schema. So now the next thing is to create the tables. So let's go back to the questions. So if you look at here, we have it says create a table that accepts payment and withdrawals made by a contributor. So we are going to create a table using these fields. Okay, so let's create that table. So as you can see, by default you already have table 1. So we're going to change the name of this table here. So let's just come to the view and then we click design view, and we are going to call this remember the name of that table should be transactions. So we're going to call it transactions. Transactions, and then we click OK. So now the table is created. Now the first field that we are asked to create is the current date. Okay, so we're going to type the current date. Okay, and then we move to the next one. The next one is the contributor ID. Contributor ID, and from the contributor ID we have the contributor name. You have the contributor name, and then we also have the savings, and after the savings we have withdrawals, and then the last field there is the collector ID. Okay, so as you can see here, so in the questions, if you look at it, there is nowhere that they ask you to choose a data type, so you have to be able to know based on the field name which data type is more appropriate. So in this case, for current date, I will use the date and time data type. For the contributor ID, it depends. If I told you this thing is only going to be numbers, your contributor ID is only going to contain number characters, then you can choose numbers. But remember, if we look back into the question here, we are told that the contributor ID should have the format, this format, okay? And we're going to be using input mask, and input mask doesn't allow, you cannot use input mask on number, on number fields, on number data types. You can only use input marks mostly on text and date data types. So in this case, the best is to just leave that the contributor ID to text. So if you're using let's say, for example, Microsoft Access 2010, you may not see short text, you may only see text. So set text and short text are all the same. So contributor name text, savings text, but if I want, I can also use currency if I want. But I will advise, if at all you don't know which data type to choose appropriately, just choose text by default. Okay, just choose text. If you don't know which appropriate data type you should use, just leave it to text. So in this case here, I'm going to leave all these other ones to text. Okay, so now I will move on to answer this question here, Roman figure 2, which is the contributor ID should have the format XXX. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I will click on the data type of contributor ID, and I will come down here to where you have the input mask. So when I click on the input mask, there are two ways I can do this. Okay, it's either I type it directly if I know how to create an input mask. If I know how to, if I have an idea of how to create an input mask manually, or if I want, I can click on these three dots. Okay, so now let me just click on these three dots. So the input marks wizard will ask you to first save your table before you can continue. So I will just say yes, save the table. Now here I will just come, as you can see, you have different options here. Okay, you have different formats. So you see long date, you see it works on date and time, and it also works on on password and also something like that. So as you can see, I've already created the contributor ID before I even create this tutorial, but I'm going to create another one so that you can see how it works. So from here I can just click edit list. It doesn't matter what you select, just click on edit list. So within the edit list here, so what I'm going to do, okay, you can name this as contributor ID if you want, or anything that you wish. So when you come to the input marks, this is where you have to set the characters. So here after, maybe if I just click here and press the tab key, so what I'm going to do here, I will say 00. So but when you put 00 here, remember 00 means numbers. If that means you are allowing number characters. But if at all you want letters, then that's the time you'll use L. L is for letters. Let's say I want the first four characters, I want them to be letters, so I will use capital L 4 times, and then maybe I want the last two digits or last two characters to be numbers, then I will use 0. Okay, so if you want letters, you use L. If you want numbers, you can use that to represent 0. So this is left to you. So it depends on how you want to set your contributor ID, whether you want them to be all numbers, all letters, or a mixture of numbers and letters. So in my case, I'm going to use all numbers. So I will put 0 4 times, space, and then 0 2 times. So where you have the placeholder, as you can see in the question here, it shows you XX. So XX here is the placeholder. That means what is going to appear in the field when you start typing. What is going to appear in the field by default is called the placeholder. So here, as you can see, you can just type X. Then when you press tab here, you see automatically this is how it is going to appear on the field XXX. You see we already have the format. So let's say I click here and press tab. Okay, so I can start typing something. You see, the moment I start typing a number, you see what is happening. So those X's are now going to be replaced by the values that I am typing. Okay, by the values that I am typing. So you see the 4 digits are here. After the 4 digits, you have a space, and then you have the 2 digits. Okay, so this is just a sample data to show you exactly how it is going to look like before you commit to it. So let's click close now to end that question. Then from there, we make sure that we choose the input marks that we created just now, and then from here we can either click next to see what we have done. Okay, if we are satisfied, then we click finish. So now we have created an input mark. So if at all you wanted to type it manually, this is how you are going to do it. Now look at here, you have 4 zeros, and then you have the backslash. So the backslash here represents the space, and then you have the other 2 digits, and then you have the 2 semicolons, and then the X here representing the placeholder. Okay, so from here we can just save our table, and then we move to the next question. So the next question here is said okay, so we have already saved it as transaction. So the next table here is talking about creating another table that will show the fields collector ID, collector name, and then the rank. Okay, so now I will just go to create. Then from create, I can just say table design. Okay, table design. Then I will come here and say collector ID, and from collector ID, collector name, and then you have the rank. Okay, so we can leave all these to text. We can leave all these to text. And one thing you also need to take note of is remember, I plan to connect collector ID in this table with the collector ID in this other table where I'm creating the relationship. So I have to make sure that the fields that I'm going to use to create the relationship, they should have this exact data type. One cannot be number, the other one text, or the other one date, and the other one number. They must be of the same data type before you'll be able to relate them. So make sure that the collector ID in this table and the collector ID in the transactions table should be of the same data type. Okay, so now from here we can save our table. So we click there, and then we click yes to save the table. So this one should be called collectors. The name of this table should be called collectors. Okay, so here it says, although a primary key isn't required, it's highly recommended. A table must have a primary key for you to define a relationship between this table and other tables in the database. Do you want to create a primary key? So I will say yes. So primary keys are required if you want to create a relationship, because in this table, remember, we're going to be using the collector table as the one. We are going to be creating a one-to-many relationship based on the information that is given. The relationship type should be one-to-many, and we are going to make collectors table as the one and the transactions table as the many. So there should be a primary key. So as you can see, when I click on yes, Access automatically create a new field called ID, but I will delete that one for now. Okay, I will delete that one for now, and I will set the collector ID. So I'll just right click here and then click on primary key. So now collector ID is the primary key of this table. Now what the primary key does, it makes so that this field, whatever is entered in this field, should not be duplicated, right? Whatever is entered into this field should not be duplicated. So that is the purpose of the primary key here. So I'm going to close that one and click yes to save. So I'll go to the transactions table. In the transactions table, as you can see, I also have collector ID. So in this case here, collector ID will not be the primary key of this table. If I make it the primary key of this table, when I link them, when I'm creating the relationship, that means we are not going to be having one-to-many. We are going to be having one-to-one. Because if both fields that you are linking are having the same, both primary keys, you cannot create a one-to-many. You can create one-to-one. That means both fields are not accepting duplication. But we want duplication here. Why? Because in the transactions table, contributors, many contributors can contribute to one collector. Okay, so in this case here, we are going to make the contributor ID, because after that, this is what is unique here, right? This is only after the collector ID. The only thing that is unique here is the contributor ID. So when you are setting primary keys, also you have to make sure that you set it to a field that will contain unique values. So I'm going to right click here and then click on primary key, so that contributor ID will be the primary key of the transactions table. Okay, so I'm going to close it. I'm going to click on save and then I close. So right now, as you can see on the left hand side here, I have two tables. I have the transactions table, so I'm going to double click to open it. Sorry, I have the collectors table with 3 fields, and then I have the transactions table which is having about 6 fields. Okay, so now let's move into the next question. The next question after that says create a relationship with the tables. Okay, so we are going to create a relationship. Now to create a relationship, you first need to make sure that the tables are closed. You close all the tables, say yes. Okay, so after closing the tables, now you can head to database tools. In the database tools, now you can click on relationships. So I'm going to click on relationship. I will double click on the collectors table and then double click on the transactions table, and then I click close. So now I have both tables in the relationship area here. So as you can see in the collectors table, this table here is going to be the one, okay, and then this one is going to be the many. So that means one collector can collect contributions from several contributors. Okay, so we are going to link collector ID and collector ID. Remember, both of them should be of the same data type. If at all they are not, if at all you are at this point and they are not of the same data type, then you have to close this relationship, go back to the table and change the data type. They should match. So here I'm going to drag the collector ID from the collectors table and place it on top of the collector ID in the transactions table. So automatically when I release the mouse, I am going to have this dialog box, which is the edit relationship dialog box. So first you confirm whether the two fields from these tables are the ones that are appearing here. Okay, so you have to, okay, so the table collectors is this ID here. Collector ID is from the collectors table, and this collector ID is from the transactions table. So confirm that first, and then here you have the relationship type, which is one to many. This is the one and this is the many. As you can see, table and related table. So this is the main table and this is the related table. So from here, ignore all these things and then just click create. Okay, so now there is a relationship between these two tables. This is the one, this is the many. So it is a one to many relationship. So I will click close now and then say yes to save the relationship. So when you open your tables now, as you can see, the effect of the relationship, you are not going to see it now. Before we start entering any data, let's go back to the question. Okay, because let's see. Okay, so after the relationship, it says we create a form, okay, to to enter 5 records into the collector table and then the transactions table. So even though you can enter data directly into the table, but the question says you use the form, so it doesn't matter. You can use either the table to enter the data, or you can use the form. Okay, but in this case, let's just create a form, because the form is the easiest method to enter data into a particular table. Okay, so now from here we go to create, and then we can come to the forms area here. So we are going to use the form wizard, which is easier. So as you can see, the 2 tables are appearing here. So let me just first click on collectors. So these are the fields of the collectors, so I will just enter all of them, click next. So I can choose the layout that I want, so I will leave it a columnar, click next, and maybe I can just call this collectors form. Then I will click finish. So now I have a form for collectors. So I'll go back to create and then click on the form wizard. This time around I'm going to select transactions, and then I will enter all the fields, click next, choose columnar, next, and then I will call this collectors transactions form. I will call this transactions form, and then I will click finish. Okay, so now I have forms from 2 tables, right? I have separate forms from 2 tables. Okay, so now the question said we should enter 5 records from each form. Now some students might wanna, if you know how to create what is called a main form and a sub form, I think that one also would work. Okay, but for me, I think they are saying we should create 2 separate forms. But if at all you want to create a main form and a sub form, so that it will just be 1 form instead of 2 separate forms, okay, you can do something like this. Let me close this. You can say create, you go to form wizard, then let's say you select all this, and then you come here, you choose. So before you click next, you go back and choose from the transactions, because these 2 tables are linked, so it's easy for you to create use both fields from both tables to be able to create a form, which is called a main form and a sub form. So I will also make sure that rank is selected, then I will enter all the fields below that. We go to next. So here, as you can see, how do you want to view your data, either by collectors or by transactions? Okay, so I will say by collectors. So as you can see, it says form with subform. So the collector table is going to be the main form, and the transactions table is going to be the subform. So I'll click next, and then I can choose whether I want tabular or datasheet. So let me just choose tabular, for example. I will click next. So as you can see, it creates 2 sections, so the main and the subform. So collector will be the main form, and the transactions will be the subform. So let me just call this one maybe main form, for example, main form. Then if I click finish, you see it is going to create 2 forms actually, but in one place. 2 forms. Look at here. You know this. Let me delete the previous form. So I'm going to delete the previous form so that you can see what is happening here. Let me delete the previous forms. These are the first forms that I created. So now when I use that method, as you can see, the forms are separated here, 2. Okay, but inside this interface here, both of them are here. Okay, inside this interface you have both of them are here. Okay, so you can use any of these methods to create the form. It's either you create a main form and a subform, or you can create them as 2 separate forms, just like how I did it previously. Okay, so both of these options will work. So now let me delete and then use the first method. So I'm going to create forms. So both of these methods will work. Okay, so now we need to also decide on the data that we need to enter. Okay, we need to also decide on that. So let's first create our collectors. We first create our collectors, so we can also decide on the collector ID, how we want the collector ID to look like. So I'm going to just say the first collector will have an ID of 100, and then the name of the collector is Buba Sanyang. Okay, and the rank in this case, let's just say, I'm not sure what I should put here, but I'll just say data entry. Maybe I will just say data entry clerk, for example, data entry clerk. But you can just think of what you can put here as the rank of that person, the collector's name. So you have, now I have created one collector called Buba Sanyang, and I have assigned the collector ID 100. Okay, so I will click on the next button here, and then here I will create another collector. So remember, you are asked to create 5 records. So the next one I will give it 101, and then I will give that person a name. So I will call him Ibrahim Chab. Okay, or I will give him the same rank. Let me just say data entry clerk. Okay, so let me copy it so that I can just use it on the next one. So I'll go to next. So the next one, I will give that person an ID, collector ID of 102, and I will call this person Lamin Cham, and then I will press the tab key, and I will also give that person the rank of a data entry clerk. I will go to the next one, so that's the 4th one. So I will give that person 103. I will give the person the name Fatu Keta. Okay, next, so the last one, I will give that person 104, and I will call that Kumba. Okay, maybe I'll call that Jariatu Kinte. Okay, and I will give that person the same. So now we have 5 records. We have 5 records in the collectors table. Okay, so let's right click and click save. So now let's go to the collectors table and see whether the data will appear there. So if you double click, now you see the data now appeared in the collectors table. Okay, so now let's go to the transactions form. In the transactions form, as you can see, we have the date. So we have 5 records now in the collectors table, so we need to also enter 5 records here. Now here we can pick a date. So for the sake of exam, you can just pick any date. Let's just make sure that the date is formatted correctly. And look at here, when we come to the contributor ID, so if I click here and press tab, and when I start type it, let's say the contributor ID, I'm going to say 1 2 3. You see the input marks that we have created. You see the effect now. So 1 2 3 4, and then 0 0. Okay, and I will press tab. I'll put the contributor's name, Mfansu Ture, and then I will press tab, and I put, for example, the savings, I will put 10,000. Okay, and then I will press tab. Withdrawals, maybe I will say 2,000. Okay, 2,000, and then the collector ID. Now this is where it becomes interesting, the collector ID. So you have to put the collector IDs that are appearing here. Okay, now we are in the transactions table. Now this person, the details, who collected the details of this person. So we have to check who is the collector. So we are not going to put that person's name there, the collector's there, but we have to reference this ID, so it should be the same. So let's assume that collector ID 103 is the one who collected Mfansu's contribution, for example, in this case. Okay, so we go to next. So I will fast forward this so that this tutorial will not be so long. So let me just enter this information, then I will come back, we continue. Okay, so now yes, so as you can see, I've now entered 5 records into the transactions form. Okay, so now let's close this and then go to the table. So if I go to the collectors table, as you can see, I have 5 records. If I go to the transactions table also, I have 5 records. Now let me show you what I did here. Now because there is a relationship, we're going to have these plus signs. Okay, these plus signs. Now we have contributor IDs 100, 101, 102, 103, 104. So here, remember, this is a primary key here in the collectors table, so it will not allow duplication. That means 100, 101, they cannot be repeated in this field. But if you go to the transactions table where you have collector ID, as you can see, 103 appeared 2 times, 100 also appeared 2 times. So that means where you have the 100, the collector is Buba Sanyang, and where you have 103, the collector is this guy, is Fatu Keta. Okay, so that means in this table, remember this is the many table, that means the collector ID here can have duplications. You understand? Because it is a foreign key here, not a primary key. Now if I click on the plus sign, for example, for collector ID 100, which is Buba Sanyang, you see the table, you see what is appearing here, the transaction for Buba Sanyang, all the collectors, all the contributors of that Buba has collected is here. Okay, so as you can see, okay, so when I click on 101, no collected, nothing, so that's why nothing appeared here. And then 102, as you can see, 1 contributor, 103, 2 contributors, 104, no contributors. So this is the effect of the relationship. Okay, that's the effect of the relationship. So now let's move to the next question. The next question, which is actually the second to last question, says generate a report from the table. So that means we are going to create a report using both tables, just like how we did the main form and the sub form. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I will go to the create button here, and then I click report wizard. So from here I will choose the collectors table. I'll add all of them, and then I will come back here and choose transactions. So I will enter all of them except this one. I don't need a duplication of ID. So here it depends, you may even omit some of the fields if you think that they are not necessary in the report. Okay, so I'll click on next, and then I will arrange them by a collector, and I will click next. Here also you can ignore it and click next. So if you want to arrange the, for example, the names of the contributors in ascending or descending orders, you can also choose it. So I will just leave it to ascending, click next. And here it depends on the layout that you want, so I will try to choose maybe block, and then the orientation. So depending on the number of fields that you have in, so that will determine the orientation that will best fit based on the data that you have or the field. So I'll click on landscape, click next, and I will call this yes, here it says save the report as transaction report. So I will call this transaction report. And then I will click on finish. So when you click finish, as you can see, the report is in landscape now. Okay, so if at all I choose portrait, these fields may not fit. Okay, so but if you look at there are certain areas here, so it takes you directly to print preview, because reports are normally printed. So let's say, for example, I want to fix these hashtags for the date, so I will click on close print preview. If I want, I can edit it from this is the design view, but the easiest way is just to go to the layout view. So from the layout view, as you can see, I can do some editing here. So let's assume that I can close this gap here. For example, I can click and press Ctrl to select those 2 fields. I can reduce the size of this. If I want also, I can move this a bit closer here, or maybe where you have the contributor ID and these names, I can also push them a bit. So I'm clicking and dragging right now. Okay, so let's target this field here. I think something is not appearing here, and then let's see what is going to happen. So let me just push this back a little bit. Okay, then we can also come here and push this back a bit, so we can now expand the date so that the date values will now appear. So we can push that one also a bit. So now at least our information is revealed. So let's go to home, and then we go to form view, or sorry, report view. Okay, so that we can see our report. Okay, now our database have two tables. Okay, it has two tables, two forms, and then one report for both tables. Okay, and then we also have a relationship. All right, so this is what I have for you in this tutorial, and thanks for watching. And don't forget to watch the other videos where I answered the Microsoft Excel question and also the publisher question. So don't forget to subscribe, and see you next time.